Hi everyone, my name is Christopher Cedos. I'm a lawyer in Miami, Florida, and today we're going to talk about the top 5 myths regarding lawyers. And welcome to my channel. I'm going to talk about all things law, business, and entrepreneurship related. And so today I thought it'd be really fun to make a video about the top 5 myths about being a lawyer. So myth number 1 is that lawyers make a lot of money. And some lawyers do make a lot of money. However, when you look at the numbers, the lawyers that are making tons and tons of money and they're living that glamorous lifestyle, kind of like you see on shows like Suits and things like that, that's actually only about 1% of all lawyers. Those attorneys usually work at big law firms with more than 50 lawyers. Their starting salary right out of law school is probably like $150,000 a year. However, those law firms are super selective, and they really only take the top students from the top schools, like Harvard, Yale, Duke, schools like that. So the majority of lawyers, I think it's like actually 85% of lawyers, they work at a law firm with 50 or less attorneys, and their salaries are lower. However, it's still a really comfortable lifestyle. However, the most interesting thing is that lawyers that work at big law firms, most of them are working like 65, 80 hours a week. So when you break down their salary into the actual time spent at the office, they're actually not making as much as it looks like. Also, what's interesting is most lawyers that work at large law firms with more than 50 attorneys to make these huge salaries, they report the lowest satisfaction with their career. Lawyers who make the least amount of money, those are ones that usually work for like a legal aid or some sort of government position. They report the highest satisfaction with their career. So a lot of times it's not all about money, and being a lawyer is definitely not a sure path to success. However, it's a comfortable lifestyle. Okay, so number 2, that being a lawyer, you're going to be able to make change in the government and fight for justice. So at some level it is true. You are fighting for justice. It's little battles every day, but actually winning the war and changing the legal system probably is not going to happen. However, the coolest part about being a lawyer, I personally think, is that people only come to a lawyer when they have a serious problem. And when you're able to solve that problem or find a way out of that problem for them, you can just see the sense of relief on their face, and it's almost like the weight has been lifted off their back. So that to me is the coolest part, and essentially every case kind of is like a little injustice, and you're trying to fight to fix it. Whether it's a car accident and someone gets hurt and they deserve to get their medical bills paid and to be compensated, or you're fighting for a tenant, say, that gets wrongfully evicted, or an immigration case. So all of them are like little injustice battles. So the third biggest misconception about being a lawyer is that a lot of people think if you're good at arguing, that means you're going to be good at being a lawyer. And I for sure thought this. I remember when I was in elementary school, I still remember there was a couple girls that used to argue all the time, and they used to tell everyone they're going to be great attorneys because they love to argue. So it is and isn't true. The biggest surprise to me about being a lawyer is that once you start to really butt heads with opposing counsel and you stick your feet in the ground and it's, I'll see you at court, you actually get nowhere. It's funny, the famous saying that you catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar is so true. If you're nice and cordial to opposing counsel, to a degree, you don't want to let them totally walk all over you. But if you're nice to them and you try to reach a compromise, usually they're going to try to reach the compromise with you. They'll meet you halfway. However, if you get into basically just like a pissing match with opposing counsel, usually no one's willing to compromise, and sometimes you both end up losing in the end, because even though you go to a jury trial and win, you've also spent a lot of money. Biggest myth about being a lawyer is that it's a super glamorous lifestyle, that you're a litigator and you're out in court arguing all day, you're winning jury trials, and then you go to the bar with your paralegal and have a drink, and you're meeting interesting people, and that's not really true. A lot of times TV shows, they show being a lawyer as a super glamorous lifestyle. I mean, I know I was a sucker for Suits, that show. I love that show, and I loved how the fact every episode, they're out doing these huge corporate deals. They're trying to get the best, deal, fight for justice for their client. And then at night, they're hanging out the Ferrari party, and they're going out for drinks, and they're flying to France, so they're buying a tuxedo. It just looks super glamorous. But the reality is, most of a lawyer's time is actually spent in the office preparing. 99%, and this is a real number, 99% of all cases do not go to a jury trial. They settle. So 99% of a lawyer's work is preparation. It's drafting demands and motions and pleadings and trying to get creative with the settlement, trying to reach a compromise, because in the end, you're better off compromising a lot of the time than you are to risk going all the way to a jury trial where you're not 100% sure of the outcome. Okay, the fifth biggest misconception and myth about lawyers is that lawyers are boring. And a lot of them, to be honest, a lot of them actually really are. Their personalities are pretty dry. But I also know a lot of lawyers that are really fun to be around. And I guess you get your first glimpse of it in law school. You have some personalities that are super dry and super just matter of fact, and then other people's that really like to have fun. And I think it's just people. That's just personalities. And lawyers are no different. There are definitely some lawyers that are super dry. I've had plenty of times where I go into a deposition or a mediation and opposing counsel is sitting across the table from me, and we just try to have a small conversation, maybe make some jokes, and it's like you're really getting nowhere. There's, is this thing on type deal. So in that situation, yeah, there's definitely attorneys like that. But there's also lots of times attorneys that are a lot of fun to be with. And, if you're going to settle a case, sometimes you'll say, hey, let's meet up for lunch and we can discuss it then. And you can you really become friends with them. And I find that helps a lot in the case. Okay, so there you have it. Those are the top 5 myths, in my opinion, about lawyers. Let me know what you think and leave a comment below and like and subscribe.